Welcome to USAWatchdog.com. Well, it's a real treat. He's haven't had him on in a while, but he's got his work cut out for him over at JS Mindset and the Holter Sinclair collaboration. It's a financial expert, gold expert, Bill Holter. Bill Holter, thank you for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com.
Thanks for having me back, Craig.
I usually wrote an article about this China trade deal, which is war, spat, tit for tat, whatever you want to call it. And you were laying out all the things that could go wrong for the United States, and the kind of some of the tools that that China could use. They could stop buying our treasury bonds. Supposedly that's been reported. But what you were talking about is something even simpler. And that's what you've been talking about for a long time, and that's just stand for delivery. Tell me about what China could do to try to upset the entire apple cart, and at the center of it is gold and silver.
Right. I think it was over the weekend there was an article, and there's a couple articles out regarding China's reactions or potential reactions to the tariffs and trade war. And one thought is, well, they could devalue. Another thought is they could stop buying treasuries, which that's already been reported, or they could actually outright dump treasuries. There's also talk about them putting tariffs on our goods, putting tariffs on services, and also another thought, and this is probably of these probably the most important, is if they withheld rare earth metals, because the rare earth metals are used in a lot of the technological weapons. They require rare earths. Now, going one by one, and it would hurt our trade deficit. I mean, our deficit is humongous already. It would just get worse. That would not necessarily immediately cheaper. The second one was about not buying treasuries or actually dumping treasuries. That one doesn't really pass muster, in my opinion, because the Federal Reserve would just step up and buy anything and everything for sale. It wouldn't matter how big they had to blow their balance sheet up. They would just monetize and buy everything sold. And they can do that, even though they've only got, what, $50 or $60 billion in equity in their balance sheet. As I wrote in the article, balance sheet be damned. They'll just buy everything. As far as services and tariffs are concerned, the U.S. really, from a trade standpoint, we don't actually export enough to make a difference. And then the rare earths. That's extremely important because China controls and Russia controls the bulk of the rare earths worldwide. Now, my thought is the easiest way to do to take the West system down to punish the U.S. would simply be stand for delivery of gold and silver silver would be the easiest.
But why would silver be the easiest?
Well, because it's the smallest market. I mean, total global production of silver at current prices is something like $12 billion. It's not even 15 billion. And gold is only 100 billion. So you're talking about a very small amount dollar-wise. In the article, I talked about in the old days when they had runs on banks, it was because depositors feared that there were too many loans outstanding versus the gold held, or the gold had leaked out some way or whatever, and there was not enough gold to convert if currency came in to convert it under the fractional reserve system. In today's world, the Federal Reserve will step up and create liquidity. We saw it done in 2009. They lent 16 trillion all over the world. So a bank run in terms of the way bank runs used to happen it's almost an impossibility because they can create unlimited amounts of liquidity. But a run on inventories of gold and silver And I think we're seeing that, and that's why the COMEX has gone, and they've already delivered nearly a full year's. Let me say, go back on that. The COMEX has sent EFP contracts, that's exchange for physical, over to London in amounts that equal roughly a full year's annual production of gold and a full year's annual production of silver.
And hold on. And you're talking about an annual production is from January 1 to December 31st, right? Is that what you're talking about?
Right, but they've already done it so far from January 1 to March 31st.
Whew. Wow.
Or just under a full year's production. So if you tripled what we've done so far this year, you'd be looking at just massive amounts of gold. You'd be looking at in silver, you'd be over 3 billion ounces.
Whoa, boy! They've already got, and they already have people that are like, okay, pallet out our stuff. We'd like to have it. You got our money. We want the physical. We don't want to.
Well, that's the theory, is that these are being sent to London. Obviously, if you look at the COMEX inventories, they can't handle even a couple of days worth of what is supposedly standing for delivery. Now, I would question, if this goes on for a full year, does London really have 3 billion ounces? I mean, that's 50% more than the Manhattan Project used, and that was the biggest hoard of silver the world has ever seen in all of its history. So could they really deliver 3 billion ounces? I mean, go back, Greg.
Wait. I just want to interject here. You're talking that something's going to give big time, and we could have a non-delivery realization in the silver market, which would catapult the gold market as well. Are you telling me that this is going to happen this year? That a non-delivery of a 3 million ounce, how many 3 million ounces of silver? We're talking about a non-delivery discovery.
Yeah, 3 billion with a B.
3 billion ounces. So you were talking that 3 billion ounces. Somebody may come up and say, "We don't have it this year." That's what you're saying could happen.
That's what it looks like. If what has happened so far in the first 3 months of the year were to continue for the full year, you'd be over 3 billion ounces, and that's not deliverable.
What happens when the realization throughout all the markets comes known that they can't deliver the physical 3 billion ounces of silver? The LBMA, I guess.
That's called an old-fashioned run on the bank. It would be a run on the entire system. You would have every metals exchange. You'd have a run on every metals exchange. You probably would have runs on many physical commodities, and confidence throughout the whole system would break. It would basically show that the Western fractional reserve system is a fraud and has been for many, many years.
When do you think this realization is going to hit? I mean, you already said it's already in the pipeline for delivery. That people are standing for delivery. When is this going to hit? Holy cow! That's some real news.
Well, you could ask, has it already hit? We don't hear people jumping up and down saying we've not gotten delivery, but can London really deliver 1 billion ounces or 2 or 3 billion ounces? The answer to that is no. But what they've done is they've pushed these out into the future. For instance, the current exchange for physicals that are being moved from COMEX to London have a June expiration. And I might add that.
So wait. So before you add. So you're saying by June, they're going to say, "Oops, sorry." Is that what you're telling us?
Well, what I'm telling you is the exchange for physicals right now are piling up in the June time date. And if you go back, and maybe I'm wrong, but I don't ever remember silver futures outstanding for, I believe, July of 2019. So that's 15 months out. And there are actually July silver futures, or not futures, but options that are dated for, I believe, December of 2019. And I don't recall any silver options ever being longer than a year, but there's huge open interest.
And you're saying that are you saying that 2018 might be the whole year that the whole fraud of the paper contracts, the naked short selling, the whole where the rubber meets the road, the stand for delivery? You think the whole thing could blow in 2018 when people don't get their silver?
Well, I think the whole thing has a very good chance of blowing this year. Let's add this. Let's add this in. We know that the amount of sealed indictments that started back in November, December, they're now up to 24,500 sealed indictments, which is many, many, many multiples of anything we have ever seen in a year's time. And it's my theory, and I've written about this literally since December, January. People were when it first came out, there was 9,000 or 11,000 sealed indictments, and you'd see in the comments section, well, until I see perp walks or orange jumpsuits, I'm not going to believe it. And you still hear that today. It's been my theory since hearing those comments that these sealed indictments are going to be opened methodically and in a line beginning probably late May, June, July, August. And that leads up to what? It leads up to the next election. So I think you're going to have all kinds of indictments, arrests leading into the election. It's going to be, as I wrote last year about truth bombs, and this year, truth finally mattering. I just think that you will see these sealed indictments opened, served, and you'll see indictments and arrests.
Well, I think they're going to have to stop the fraud. I mean, they had the Election Integrity Commission. I believe that's what they call it. They stopped it. And they keep saying there's no evidence of voter fraud because they won't give up any. I mean, 8 or 9 states, including California and New York, wouldn't give up. Now they turn it over to the Division of Homeland Security, which is a national security issue. What say you?
How about 1 million driver's licenses issued to illegal aliens in California?
And they signed them up to vote. And in your state, the state of Texas has a big voter fraud case going on right now.
You need no more proof than that to show that there's voter fraud.
Yeah, that's just the new people they signed up.
Well, and go back to the 2012 election. What was it? There was a precinct in Pennsylvania, I think it was somewhere in Philadelphia, where not one person voted for Romney, and there was 117% turnout to voter registration. I mean, you can't tell me there's no voter fraud. That's complete bull.
Yeah. Wayne County, in Wayne County, where Detroit is, ballot box stuffing. They had, I don't know, they had so many different precincts they couldn't even count the votes because it was irregularities. Thank you, Jill Stein. But what do you think about this war footing that we're on with Syria and this gas attack? And some people call it a false flag. Other people are saying, no, Russia, Syria really did it. Maybe they. I thought it was weird timing. I thought it was very weird timing. We're getting ready to leave, and all of a sudden there's a gas attack. But then again, maybe I don't know. I don't know. I'm not on the ground there. Maybe they thought, hey, we'll do this now, and they'll think that the Americans did a false flag. I don't know. What do you think? But one thing's for sure, we're going to strike Syrian air bases, and Israel also is striking Syria repeatedly because reportedly Iran is there building up their military on their border. But what do you think about the war footing in the Middle East?
Well, it's hard to know what to believe. I mean, just look at the...
yes, it's very hard to know what to believe.
Look at the Russian spy and his daughter that were poisoned. They weren't poisoned. They were dead. No, they're alive. It's hard to know what to believe. I mean, who is behind the gas? And isn't it? You can't even use the word coincidence that President Trump talks about leaving Syria, and then all of a sudden, boom, there's a gas attack. It makes bizarre. Zero sense for Assad to do something like that. If the U.S. was going to leave, he should just go into a closed room and be quiet until the U.S. leaves. But no, there's a gas attack, and supposedly he did it. That makes zero sense. But now you've got the war hawks, the deep state, getting what they wanted. Oh, we have to hit Syria. It's bogus.
Even if it is bogus, what do you think about this touching off a wider war?
Oh, I think it's very dangerous. I mean, you've got the Donald Cook again is in the news. They're off the Syrian coast, and as of yesterday, it was considered odd because there was no backup, and now it looks like there's a fleet behind them about 150 miles. I mean, this is so dangerous, and I worry. I mean, obviously, you worry about a hot war because with the weapons available today, you could have World War III start in a heartbeat. But you look at the market today is up what 400 or 500 points, and you've got this talk of trade war, you've got this talk of hot war. It's just amazing that markets have held together and can ignore potential annihilation.
And this was Tuesday. You're talking about yesterday, Tuesday.
Yeah.
I'm at a loss for how much longer this could go on. I was talking to one of my friends about how much. I mean, I know the Trump administration, and I like Donald Trump, but he inherited a $20 trillion deficit when he walked into office, and 6 weeks of spending left before he had to pass some sort of a budget. But I mean, he walked into a very bad situation. It's not very good. How much longer do you think they can keep this going? I mean, one of the truth bombs is they're not going to be able to keep this going, isn't it?
Well, there's absolutely no way to tell how long they can keep it going. I would just mention that globally, and this was announced, I think, yesterday or this morning, the world now has $237 trillion of debt. That's up 21 trillion over the last year. That's a 10% growth rate.
And I mean, back in 2008, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but back in 2008, we had what, $160 trillion, and that blew the whole sister up. Now we have $237 trillion. I mean, it's stunning.
Right. Well, the point I was trying to make is the amount of debt grew by 21 trillion over the last 12 months globally. That's roughly 10%. So debt grew by 10%. How much did global GDP grow? 2%, 3%? I mean, that is totally unsustainable. You cannot. It used to be that debt was used to spur growth, and you could add a little bit of debt and you could add $1 worth of debt and get $5 worth of growth. And now it's like we're adding $5 worth of debt and getting only $1 worth of growth, and it's mathematically unsustainable.
And I just wanted to get in there that everybody thinks that the United States is in bad shape, which it is. And you talk about Stanford delivery, and they could expose the whole Western system. Good point. That also that they could stop buying treasuries. Good point. That they could sell treasuries. Another good point. But China is, according to David Stockman, this big long article, and hats off to him. China's not in such good shape. I mean, they grew their debt by exponential, historical amounts that have never happened in history, according to David Stockman. I mean, China is not such a strong hand, is it not?
I'll talk about that in one moment. I want to ask the question, can the U.S. really afford a giant conventional war? And I believe the answer is no. As for China, yes, about it.
So China can, you broke up just a minute, China can have a big, long conventional war.
Well, yeah, they can, but let's assume that they do go the way of credit collapse. I don't think it will bother China at all. I've written about this for over 3 years, that China played the West's game and levered themselves up. But what did they get for levering themselves up? They got infrastructure. They got bridges. They got airports. They got roads. You name it. They got real stuff. And the U.S., it's pissed away. So China could have a collapse, and they can start over again because they have a manufacturing base, they have modern infrastructure, and most importantly, they have money. They have gold. They've accumulated over 20,000 tons, and I can show you that on the back of a napkin. They have over 20,000 tons of gold. The U.S. has not had an audit since the 1950s of our gold, and I would highly doubt we've got more than 1,000 tons that's unencumbered or still there.
Just moving on right here. How do you think this ends this year? This seems to me like we've only been in. I mean, I'm just like panting at the news, and we're only in April, and it's just like every day is another huge story that we'd get like every quarter, and now we're getting it every week. We're getting some huge story. Are you getting fatigued with the pace of the truth bombs that are coming, and is the pace going to increase or level off?
Well, it's not so much fatigue, but it's almost like information overload. There's just so much coming so quickly. To answer your question, I think the phase of slow burn is going to end up in a light switch event where you wake up, and I've said this for a while, you go to bed on Friday, you wake up Monday morning and markets don't open for whatever reason.
And I've been telling people, Bill, I know it's fatiguing, but you got to get yourself in a position of readiness. You got to get ready and stay ready, and keep yourself ready. I mean, I that's what I think, because I think the same thing you do, and other people like you, smart like you, have said this exact same thing. I can't tell you how many people have said the exact same thing you say. You've been saying this for a long time. You know, you go to bed on a Friday. Andrew McGuire just said this. I mean, you go to home on a Friday, and on Monday morning you get a brand new world.
This is math, logic, and common sense.
Go ahead. Yeah, math, logic, and common sense. You had a little breakup. Go ahead. This is math, logic, and common sense. Go ahead.
This is math, logic, and common sense. This is no longer opinion. You could go back to 2006, 2007, and it could be argued that it was opinion at that point. It's no longer opinion. It's pure math. The system is unsustainable. We're headed for a train wreck. Do I absolutely know it's going to be this year? No, I don't know that, but you can see that the events are piling up so quickly that it certainly looks like it's going to come to a crescendo very soon.
You know, something else that people don't think about is this 21 trillion missing dollars. It's just DOD and HUD. And Mark Skidmore had him on. I mean, Rob Kirby was saying, you know, when the world realizes that additional $21 trillion is out there, that when that is, this is on top of the 20 trillion, on top of the 237 trillion that's already grown. There's another 21 trillion we're missing. He says that's just, when this whole weight of the debt gets fully realized, that the whole thing is just going to come down in a hurry. What say you?
Well, first you got to ask, is that part of the money supply? I mean, is that even part of what we're told exists? And
what if it's way more? Like Rob Kirby says, what if it's 3 or 4 times X, not X?
That's where I was going to go. Is that once the fraud starts to be unveiled, we're going to find out that it's multiples worse than pretty much anybody in the alt media even talks about.
And with that, we'll leave it there. Once the star gets going to be worse than what even. Wow, it's good. So you think it's? I guess in closing, you think the fraud is way worse than anybody can imagine?
Oh yeah, it's going on since. Well, I would say it's gone on for forever with politicians. But in the U.S., you could pretty much say that the fraud has gone on since, call it 1960, 1970. It's gone on since August 15th, 1971. That's when we went off the gold standard. And we were able to freely print money. And then 73 came around, the petrodollar, and that basically allowed the U.S. to borrow in, for all intents and purposes, unlimited amounts.
Bill Holter, brand new article out. What's the title of your article on JS Mindset? JS Mindset. What's the title of your article?
I forget. I've written so many articles, Greg.
It's about
China's nuclear option.
That's right.
Why does no would consider China's nuclear option.
It was a heavy article, lots of links, lots of analysis in it. It was a great article. I mean, that's like when you came up with the whole thing about, listen, all they have to do is just stand for delivery for gold and silver. I thought, wow, brilliant in the simplicity. Thank you, Bill Holter, for coming on and showing off your brain. Bill Holter, the JS Mindset, also the Holter Sinclair collaboration. Thanks for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com.
Thank you, Greg.